The moment his hand brushed her wrist, it felt accidental, almost. But the way his fingers lingered for a breath too long made her pulse jump. She didn't look at him right away. She didn't trust her eyes not to give her away. Not after what he had said to her months ago, with that cold, unshakable arrogance. "You'll never find someone better." Now he stood in front of her, shoulders tense, jaw tight, as if he could sense the truth she no longer bothered to hide. The air between them carried that charged quiet, the kind that feels like a wire pulled too tight. He wasn't supposed to care anymore. She wasn't supposed to feel anything. Yet here they were, breathing the same moment, sharing the same silence, each pretending they didn't feel the heat curling under their ribs. She caught his gaze for a second, just long enough to see the flicker of something he didn't want her to notice, a mix of jealousy, regret, and something dangerously close to longing. And then there was the stranger across the room. The one whose presence had unsettled him the moment he walked in. The one who made her laugh in a way she hadn't laughed in years. The one who didn't have to try to make her feel seen. His eyes kept drifting toward her now, warm and steady, as if he knew she was trying to hold herself together. Her ex noticed. Of course he did. His voice dropped low, almost a warning. "So that's him?" She didn't answer. She didn't need to. The shift in her eyes told him everything. He stepped closer, too close, his breath brushing her cheek. "You really think he's better than me?" he whispered, the edge of insecurity slicing through the bravado. She swallowed hard, torn between the past tugging at her and the future waiting for her. A soft tremor fluttered in her chest when the new man caught her gaze again, his expression gentle but unmistakably protective. For a single suspended moment, she stood between two versions of her life, one that had already broken her, and one that might finally heal her. And just as she parted her lips to speak, both men took a step toward her at the exact same time. The room stilled. The choice was no longer distant. It was here. And it was about to collide. The two men halted in front of her, and for a second, no one spoke. The silence felt alive, humming against her skin. She hadn't meant for them to meet like this, not with so much history stacked behind her, and so much possibility standing in front of her. Her breath caught as her ex's shoulder brushed hers, lightly, almost as if he wanted to remind her he once knew every inch of her. But the new man's presence across the room pulled her like gravity, warm and steady, grounding her in a way she wasn't prepared for. Her ex leaned in first, voice low, quieter than the noise around them. "You didn't answer me," he murmured, eyes locked onto hers like he was searching for a piece of himself in her expression. "Is he really better?" She could feel the question sinking into her, heavy and unsteady. She didn't flinch, but she also didn't let him see her softness. "Not anymore." "It's not a competition," she whispered back, though her voice trembled just enough for him to catch it. He exhaled, a soft, frustrated sound. "It always was with us." Before she could reply, the new man approached, slow steps, calm posture, but with a subtle fire in his eyes that told her he wasn't backing down. When he reached them, he didn't touch her. He didn't have to. His nearness alone felt like a quiet promise. "You all right?" he asked her, his voice low, warm, the kind that felt like it settled right under her ribs. She nodded, but her ex scoffed under his breath. "She's fine." The new man's gaze didn't shift away from hers. He was asking a question she wasn't ready to answer. "Do you want me here?" Her pulse jumped. She swallowed. "I am," she said softly. "I just didn't expect this." Her ex's jaw tightened. "You didn't expect to bring him around either?" The new man's hand hovered close, not touching, but close enough that she felt the whisper of warmth. "If you want me to leave, I will," he said, his voice gentle but unwavering. Her breath trembled. She looked from one to the other, caught in the tension pulling her in two different directions. She felt the familiar ache of her past standing inches from her, and the new, fragile spark of something better waiting quietly beside her. Her fingers twitched at her side, aching for clarity, for air, for someone who held her without breaking her. And in that moment, both men watched her with the same question in their eyes. Who did her heart choose? The answer clung to her tongue, but she couldn't speak it. Not yet. The room felt smaller. The heat thicker. Her heart louder. And the story between them was only beginning to burn. The room seemed to breathe with them, every inhale threaded with tension that none of the three dared to name. Her ex shifted first, stepping half a pace back, not far enough to release her, but far enough to let the truth sit between them. He wasn't the type to retreat, and the small movement made her chest tighten. She knew that look in his eyes. It wasn't anger. It was fear dressed in pride. "You don't even look at me the same anymore," he murmured, gaze flicking to her mouth for one unguarded second. "I don't know when that changed." Her throat tightened. She opened her lips to respond, but the words tangled. Because he was right. Something in her had shifted. Something she tried to bury long before tonight. The new man stood close enough to feel her hesitation. His voice came quiet, steady, like someone who chose his words with intention. "Maybe she doesn't look at you the same, because she doesn't feel the same." Her ex bristled, but she placed a faint hand on his arm before he reacted. The touch was instinct, muscle memory, and the moment her fingers brushed him, she felt the sting of familiarity, a past that had both warmed her and cut her. And just as quickly, she pulled her hand away. Not because she didn't feel anything, but because she felt too much. Her ex noticed the tremor she tried to hide. His voice softened, almost pleading. "You don't walk away from something real just because it got hard." Before she could answer, the new man stepped closer, gently, his presence not pushing, just offering. When he reached her side, his fingers grazed the back of her hand. Barely. A fleeting touch. A question without words. Her breath caught, shallow, sharp. She didn't move. Didn't pull away. Didn't lean in. But her heart did. She felt her ex's jealousy flare in the air like heat off pavement. His eyes dropped to their almost touch, the space between her fingers and the new man's. "So this is where you are now?" he asked, voice shaking with a mix of hurt and disbelief. She looked at him, not with anger, not with coldness, but with a kind of quiet sorrow. "I'm trying to figure out where I belong." The new man's expression softened. He didn't claim her. Didn't push. Just whispered, "Take your time." Her ex clenched his jaw. "You think you know her?" The new man's gaze didn't waver. "I think I'm willing to." Her chest tightened painfully at that. Because no one had ever said it so simply. So honestly. She felt the pull between both men, the past tugging her back, the future drawing her forward. The longing sat heavy behind her ribs, warm and aching. For a second, she almost leaned into the new man's touch. Almost let her fingers slip into his. But instead, she stepped back. Not from desire, but from the fear of how real it felt. The space she created wasn't distance. It was a confession. She wasn't ready. But she wanted to be. And both of them saw it. The silence after she stepped back was sharper than any argument they'd ever had. It cut through the room, through the noise, through her pulse. Both men watched her with the same burning question, but she wasn't looking at either of them now. She was looking at the space between her hands, at the trembling she couldn't hide anymore. Her ex was the first to break. His voice wasn't loud this time. It was tight, raw. "I didn't know you were hurting that much," he said. Not accusing. Not defensive. Just painfully honest. "I thought you leaving meant you stopped caring." She closed her eyes for a moment, and the new man took a small step toward her. Not to claim her. Just to be closer. To be someone she could lean toward if she needed something solid. "I cared," she whispered. "So much that it ate me alive." Her ex exhaled like someone punched the truth out of him. He rubbed his face, the fight draining from his posture. "Then why didn't you say something?" She looked up, first at the man she once loved, then at the one she was trying not to fall for. "Because I didn't think anyone would listen." Those words hung between them, heavy and soft, like a secret she had carried too long. The new man's expression shifted, something tender, something fierce. He stepped closer until the warmth of him brushed her skin like a second heartbeat. I'm listening now, he murmured. She swallowed hard. The breath she drew shook on the way in. Her ex watched her with wide, wounded eyes, but even he couldn't deny what was happening. The gravity pulling her forward didn't belong to him anymore. The new man raised his hand slowly, so slowly she felt the anticipation before the movement. His fingers hovered near her jaw, not touching, just close enough that her skin tingled. She didn't step away this time. She leaned into the warmth that wasn't even touching her yet. His voice dropped to a whisper so intimate it felt like it touched her spine. If I touch you, you tell me to stop. She didn't speak. Couldn't. Her breath was a confession all by itself. Her ex looked away for the first time, jaw flexing, grief tightening the edges of him. But he didn't interrupt. He couldn't. Something sacred was unfolding in front of him, broken, quiet, inevitable. The new man let his fingertips brush her cheek. Just once. Barely there. But it felt like a spark catching fire. Her lips parted. His breath hitched. The room dimmed around them, sound falling away until there was only the echo of something neither of them had dared admit. She whispered, barely audible, I'm scared. He leaned in, not kissing her, not daring, just resting his forehead against hers in a trembling, almost touch. So am I. The moment swelled, hot, fragile, breathless. And then stopped right there. Right before the world could shatter or bloom. The rain began sometime after midnight, soft at first, like the sky was exhaling. The sound pressed against the windows, turning the room into a quiet cocoon where the rest of the world felt very far away. She stood near the glass, arms wrapped around herself, breathing in the cool scent that drifted in through the barely open window. Behind her, she felt him before she heard him. His presence was warm, steady, a pulse of heat compared to the cool air brushing her skin. Either of them spoke. They didn't need to. The silence between them had changed, no longer sharp, no longer hesitant. It felt like something unfolding, slow, and inevitable. He stepped closer until his warmth touched the edge of her back, not quite touching, but close enough that her lungs tightened. When he finally whispered her name, it sounded like a question and a promise. She turned. The room was dim except for the faint golden spill from a lamp in the corner. It cast soft light across his face, eyes dark and uncertain, lips parted as though he wasn't sure he deserved this moment. She reached up, fingers trembling just slightly, and brushed a raindrop from her own cheek. His gaze followed the movement like it was something fragile. Come here, he breathed. He didn't pull her. He didn't have to. She stepped into him like her body had been waiting for the invitation. Their foreheads brushed first, gentle, almost trembling. His breath mingled with hers, warm and slow, and she felt her chest soften in a way she hadn't allowed in a very long time. His hand lifted to her jaw, thumb stroking the faint line of tension there. She closed her eyes. The softness of it undid her. Her breath melted into his as though they'd both forgotten where one ended and the other began. When he finally slid his hand down the slope of her neck, her body leaned into his touch as if it recognized him, like she'd been holding herself back for so long that her heart was finally catching up. Their bodies didn't collide. They drifted together like two magnets finding their center. The warmth of his chest pressed to hers, slow and deliberate, sending shivers through her spine. Tell me to stop, he whispered into her hair. But her fingers slid up his shirt and curled lightly at the base of his neck, answering without a single word. The air grew heavy, thick with longing. His lips brushed her temple, her cheek, the corner of her mouth, soft, reverent touches that felt like confessions. She exhaled shakily, her hands exploring the warmth beneath his clothes, feeling his breath quicken against her skin. Their bodies spoke the words they couldn't say. The apologies, the desire, the fear, the ache. Everything they had hidden burning beneath the surface. He pressed his forehead to hers once more, breath unsteady. You feel like everything I didn't know I needed. Her fingers traced the line of his jaw, tender and slow. Then don't let go. The rain outside thickened, a steady rhythm that matched the hush of their breaths. He lifted her gently, guiding her backward toward the soft glow of the room, never rushing, never pushing, just following the pull that had been waiting between them for far too long. And when her back met the wall, and his body settled against hers, the world dissolved into warmth and whispered breaths. Nothing explicit, nothing rushed, just two people breaking open in the safest way possible. They didn't fall into each other. They surrendered. Morning came quietly, slipping into the room like a secret. Soft light filtered through the curtains, pale and gentle, touching the floor before touching them. She opened her eyes slowly, not because she was afraid of what she'd see, but because she already knew the weight waiting there. He was awake. Sitting at the edge of the bed, elbows on his knees, his head bowed like he was listening to something only he could hear. The air between them felt fragile, warm, but trembling, like a thread pulled too tight. She pulled the blanket closer around her, not out of modesty, but to steady the shaking in her chest. "Hey," she whispered. He turned, and the look in his eyes made her breath falter. It wasn't regret. It wasn't triumph. It was something deeper, like he was trying to memorize the moment, knowing it might slip through his fingers. "You okay?" he asked, voice rough with the weight of unspoken things. She nodded, though she wasn't fully sure. "You?" he exhaled slowly. "I don't know," he said honestly. "Last night felt like..." He stopped, rubbed his face. "Like something I shouldn't want this much." Her stomach tightened. She sat up, the sheet clutched in her hands. "Was it wrong?" He looked at her then, really looked at her, with eyes soft enough to unravel her all over again. "No," he said. "But it scares me how right it felt." Her heart thudded painfully at that. Silence slid between them, full of the memory of warm breaths and trembling hands. But morning light has a way of stripping things bare. And now, they were left with nothing but truth. She stared at her hands. "It wasn't an escape," she whispered. "At least, not for me." He moved closer, sitting beside her. Their knees brushed, a tiny spark that felt louder in daylight. "Then what was it?" She swallowed. "Something I've been trying not to feel." His fingers gently grazed hers, testing the air, the moment. She didn't pull away. She leaned, just slightly, but enough for him to notice. Before he could speak, a knock hit the door. 3 short taps. Familiar ones. Her blood ran cold. Her ex's voice came muffled through the wood. "We need to talk." She froze. The man beside her stiffened. A twist she never wanted, at the worst possible time. He whispered her name, a quiet plea. She opened her mouth, maybe to explain, maybe to breathe, but no sound came. Because the night had opened something tender between them, and morning had come to test it. And now, every heartbeat felt like a choice. She opened the door only halfway, enough to see her ex standing there, eyes tired, hands shoved into his pockets like he was holding himself together. For a heartbeat, no one moved. The memory of last night still warmed her skin, and the weight of the past pressed against the threshold. "We don't have to do this now," she said quietly. He shook his head. "I'm not here to fight. I just needed to see you." His gaze flicked past her, just for a second, and she felt the man behind her step closer, stopping far enough to give her space, but near enough that she felt his presence like a steady breath on her spine. Her ex swallowed, voice cracking around the edges. "You look happier," he whispered. "I didn't think I'd ever see that again." It stunned her. Not because he said it, but because it was true. She stepped outside, closing the door behind her. Not to hide anything. Just to give the moment its own air. "I cared about you," she said softly. "I always will. But we stopped choosing each other long before last night." His shoulders slumped, a quiet acceptance settling in. "And him?" She let out a slow breath, the morning light warming her face. "I'm not choosing him," she said. "I'm choosing the version of myself I finally recognize when I'm with him." He nodded, eyes glistening but calm. "Then, I hope he treats you better than I knew how." It wasn't bitterness. It was surrender. A soft goodbye. They hugged, a brief, warm embrace that felt like laying a memory to rest. When she went back inside, her heart wasn't shaking anymore. The new man stood there, waiting, unsure, hopeful. "What happened?" he asked. She walked to him, slowly, purposefully, and rested her hand on his chest. "I chose peace," she said. "And somehow, that led me to you." He let out a breath he'd been holding all morning. His forehead came to rest against hers, gentle and warm, like the softest vow. No rush. No firestorm. Just a quiet promise. "Are you sure?" he whispered. She nodded, eyes closing as her fingers slid up to cup his jaw. "I already found someone better," she said, soft, honest, steady. "I just had to believe I deserved him." His lips brushed her forehead, a slow, lingering touch that said everything neither of them needed to speak. They didn't kiss. They didn't rush. They simply stood there, two hearts choosing each other in the calm after every storm. And for the first time in a long time, it felt like home.